Okay, let's dive right into this explainer on decoding corporate climate scenarios. Today, we're taking you from a basic stress test all the way to a strategic playbook. And we're going to kick things off by confronting what is probably the biggest misconception in corporate sustainability today. Listen, when we talk about climate scenarios, we are absolutely not talking about predicting the weather. We're talking about stress testing a business. It's a total fundamental shift in mindset. We aren't gazing into a crystal ball trying to guess exactly what the world is going to look like in 2050. Instead, we're actively and aggressively hunting for our own corporate vulnerabilities. So here is our playbook for today. First, we'll look beyond just a temperature goal. Second, we'll weigh transition versus physical climate risks. Third, we'll dig into exactly how companies select climate scenarios. Fourth, we're going to translate those scenarios to real business impact. And finally, building the concrete transition plan. All right, section 1, beyond just a temperature goal. To really get started, we need to completely rethink what it actually means to analyze our climate future, because as I just mentioned, it is definitively not about crystal balls. The crucial takeaway in this definition of climate scenario analysis is that we're conducting a rigorous, almost ruthless corporate stress test. Under major global disclosure frameworks like IFRS S2 or the European CSRD, regulators and investors aren't just asking for some static carbon footprint anymore. No way. They want to see if your company's strategy, its business model, its physical assets, and its financial position can actually survive the extreme pressures of entirely different but totally plausible climate futures. Now, I want you to hold this one exact question in your mind throughout the rest of this explainer. What happens to our company if a specific combination of climate policy, technology, market change, and physical climate impact actually occurs? This is definitely not some theoretical academic exercise. This is the fundamental, existential query that literally every corporate board should be asking themselves right now if they want to gauge true resilience. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates why a simple temperature target, like just saying 1.5 degrees, is nowhere near a complete scenario. To actually answer that massive board-level question, you need a whole matrix of economic and physical variables. You have to make very specific assumptions about sudden carbon taxes, wild swings in energy prices, whether insurance will even exist in certain coastal regions, and just how incredibly fast new technology will develop. It's like a giant interconnected puzzle of drivers, not just a single line on a thermometer. Moving right along to section 2, transition versus physical climate risks. Let's see how this whole matrix of variables builds into what is essentially a highly dangerous two-front war for corporations. Okay, this is one of the most critical concepts to grasp today because it completely busts the common myth that a 1.5-degree pathway is the good scenario while 4 degrees is the bad scenario. Listen, for a corporation, both pathways are intensely hazardous. They just operate through totally different mechanisms. A lower warming scenario means rapid decarbonization. That brings abrupt regulations, punishing carbon prices, and a massive, very real risk of stranded assets. On the flip side, a higher warming scenario might spare you from that immediate regulatory whiplash, but it crushes your operations with severe environmental disruption. We're talking flooded infrastructure, dangerous heat stress on your workers, and entirely broken supply chains. The real question is, can your company survive both? To get a genuinely balanced view, a company must test its resilience against all three of these highly distinct futures. You've got the orderly transition where things move predictably, steady tech development, manageable shifts in customer demand. But then you have the disorderly transition. Imagine global policy is delayed for years, and then bam, a panicked regulatory hammer drops overnight, forcing massive, sudden capital expenditure. And finally, there's the high warming physical risk scenario, where policy just largely fails. You literally have to test against all three to find exactly where your specific strategy breaks. Which brings us to section 3, how companies select climate scenarios. Now, this right here is the absolute core focus of our explainer today, the exact mechanics of how companies actually pick these futures. Because, let's be real, you cannot just cherry pick the ones that make your business look good. This 6-step method is your structural foundation. It ensures a company actually tailors its scenarios to its true material exposures. You don't just pull global temperature pathways out of thin air. You start by identifying the purpose. Are we doing a full enterprise strategy review or just testing the flood risk of a brand new factory? Then you map your material exposures. Now, these next steps are absolutely vital. You must choose meaningfully different futures using credible external sources. Think the International Energy Agency or the IPCC. No inventing your own convenient, rosy pathways. And crucially, your time horizon has to match your asset life. So, a software company, they might only look out 5 years, but a power plant or a major seaport, they need a full 30 to 50-year assessment. All right, Section 4, translating scenarios to business impact. So we've carefully selected our scenarios, but how do we take these massive global macroeconomic assumptions and apply them to a single company's daily operations? This sequential timeline right here shows the true point of scenario analysis. It's an analytical chain. Let's walk through it. Day 1, you start with the external scenario. Say carbon hits $120 a ton. By day 30, what's the business driver? Electricity prices suddenly spike. Day 60, what's our operational exposure? Well, our manufacturing lines are incredibly energy intensive and our buildings have zero insulation. Day 90, the financial effect hits. Operating expenses go absolutely through the roof and we suddenly need emergency capital expenditure. Finally, day 120, the strategic response. We must fund building insulation and sign renewable energy contracts right now, today. See what we did? We converted an uncertain, decades-away climate future into clear, present-day management decisions. Notice how directly your company's specific condition dictates the exact type of scenario you have to emphasize. A real estate firm is primarily sweating over building efficiency standards, flood risks, and whether their properties will literally be uninsurable in 20 years. Conversely, a company with massive Scope 1 emissions, like a cement manufacturer, they need to obsess over rapid transition pathways, skyrocketing carbon prices, and finding alternative fuels. They are fighting totally different battles, which means their scenario selection must be completely 100% customized to expose their own unique weaknesses. And finally, Section 5, building the concrete transition plan. Let's draw a hard, bold line between just testing our theories and taking definitive action out in the real world. You absolutely cannot conflate these two things. The scenario analysis asks, what could happen? It's a test of your vulnerabilities and your financial sensitivities based on hypothetical global changes. But the transition plan states what will the company actually do, by when, and with what resources to remain viable. It is a concrete, funded action plan. The scenario analysis is just the evidence base, right? It provides the undeniable, hard data explaining exactly why the tough actions and massive investments detailed in your transition plan are absolutely necessary for your survival. So what does a truly credible transition plan actually look like? Well, I can tell you it is far more than just a glossy sustainability brochure. It requires hard data, rigidly controlled greenhouse gas baselines, very specific decarbonization levers, like electrification and process optimization, and a clear asset roadmap, determining exactly what gets retrofitted and what gets retired. But most importantly, and I cannot stress this enough, it must have CAPEX and OPEX funding plans, real capital and operational expenditure. A transition plan without strict capital allocation connected directly to your financial planning is just a nice-sounding policy statement. It is not an executable strategy. And that brings us to our core philosophy today, brilliantly summarized by this quote. Companies do not choose the most comfortable climate scenario. They choose a credible range of sufficiently different scenarios that can expose weaknesses in their current strategy. The strongest, most resilient business model maps out its exposures, it quantifies the financial hit, and then it responds with fully funded actions. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to ask yourself, is your organization bravely hunting for its own vulnerabilities to build true resilience? Or is it just trying to predict a future that feels safe? Think about that next time you look at your own company's strategy.